How great would it be to get up close and personal with the beauty industry heroes we love and admire, and to ask them, how did you learn to do what you do? I'm Chris Baran, a hairstylist and educator for 40 plus years, and I'm inviting all our heroes to chat and share the secrets of their success. Well, welcome to one more episode of Headcases. Now, I'm going to just a spoiler alert here. A lot of times we have people that are on that are icons in the industry, hair heroes on the industry, and this person is one as well in my mind, but for different reasons. And that is because of the finance that we have in our business. And I'm using the word finance in the term of our, and this is the spoiler alert. In our industry, we have a reputation of being low-income earners, which we all know is not true. But this is something that has been perpetuated by government, other agencies, etc. And we finally have a gentleman on here who has collected proper data. And the data is about what the potential is that we have in our industry. And so I want to give you that, but this is something that I tell you that is a must listen to. So, but before we do that, I think it's really, I want to give some of the creds that this person has before we start off so that you can understand what kind of cred he has for him and that he can back up things. He said he's been a guest professor at the Entrepreneurship Center at University Mass of Boston. He's worked with Merrill, BOA, and JP Morgan Chase. He's been the founder of 2 to 10 Project. He's been a board member for the Beauty Changes Lives. He's founder of Qnity for Salons, Qnity for Schools, and Qnity Institute. He has worked globally as an owner or in chief level roles for salons, distribution, retail, and manufacturing. He is, as based on all that, creative, an educator, a program designer, and a whole brain thinker, and is known for making finance and money matters simple, visual, and approachable for creative professionals. He's a trusted financial expert and leader in the beauty and wellness industry, and he's been an advisor to some of the top beauty companies that we have in our industry. So let's get into this week's head case, Mr. Tom Kuhn. The study was performed by the Qnity Institute, whose purpose is to create economic empowerment through actionable data and financial literacy. The study was designed as a long-term effort to provide greater clarity on communications in the professional beauty industry and should not be viewed as the only point of reference. The findings and data points are subject to evolve as outreach expands and as additional segments of the workforce are added to the data collection process. The study does not imply a promise or guarantee of wages or benefits for those considering a career in pro beauty. Refer to full disclosures and disclaimers in the report. To get more information or to access the full report, go to qnityinc.com/pro-beauty-compensation-study. Mr. Kuhn, or as hopefully I can call you as Tom, because we had a little meeting before and I feel that we got good friends right off the start. I really feel that I feel your energy and I love it. And I just want to say first off, hey, welcome to Headcases.
Well, Chris, thanks for having me as a guest. I have to acknowledge you and give you a shout out. Thanks to you. Thanks for having me part of this, and congratulations on all the work and the impact that you're doing, my friend. And I think we can start using the word friend because I felt an instant affinity with you and your work. And you know what,
100%. And but I just want to give, first of all, just to give everybody a little heads up. I know I did it in the intro, but again, I want people to really know and understand who you are. And, so I'm going to give another little heads up. I think this is like the state of our industry and where we're at right now and why I just felt it was so important to have you on this so that all the people watching and listening that are in our business can really understand the true facts of what's going on with finance and with earning power, et cetera, in our industry. And I know that you are just one of the leading resources in that and actually have done studies on it. And that's why I want this today about fact, so people have this armed with this more than anything else. But before we jump into that, because, listen, I know that we're with hairdressers, and I know that we have, even in my family, we have this saying between my wife and I always say, if it's got a number, you give it to my wife because she handles all of that stuff. If it's got a picture, you give it to me. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are going to be talking about, they're picture people like I am, but I think it's critical, absolutely critical, where we are, particularly what's going on and what the government's view of hairdressers are, of how we deal with numbers, et cetera. So, but first, give us a little bit of background. Like, how did you get into the industry? Tell us background, where you are, what you came out of college with, and how did that end up relating to our business?
Yeah, thanks. Of course, we all love to tell our story. Thanks for the invitation. So, I was a reluctant CPA, and a little bit of story. So, I grew up in the Chicago area, big family, and pretty much supported myself through high school and college and all of that. And I found myself in college halfway through. And I hadn't declared a major yet, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So anyway, I did the logical thing someone did, just quit. I didn't quit. I did not quit at all. I took an intentional semester off.
I like that terminology.
And moved. That really was the intent. And did something radical. Moved out to Eugene, Oregon, which had the highest unemployment rate in the country at the time. And so I came back so doggone motivated and so hungry because I had seen what it was like. Now, I had grown up building swimming pools and loading trucks and all that stuff, but it really led me to say, you know what, right. I want to be in a trade. I want to be in a trade. So I declared accounting as a major and really worked very hard at it. Got good grades and all of that, and really buckled down. But I got done with the accounting degree and said, I don't want to be an accountant. Accounting to me was going to be a pre-law degree. I did not want to be an accountant, but I decided that, you know what, I'd rather be an accountant and than have 3 years of law school. So anyway, I really wasn't someone that was particularly I was interested in numbers, but I mean, it really wasn't a math guy at all. And it really was a fear of math, actually, that kept me from going in the profession I wanted, which was architecture. I literally was told by some guys that were architects, they sort of killed my dream. I'm glad they did at this point. Said, if you want to be an architect, you got to take all the math classes, calculus and all. I said, no way, But I found myself in college, and I found myself graduating with a degree in accounting. And while as a CPA, I really gravitated towards the creative industries, Chris. I always looked for the projects, and no one else wanted them. Ad agencies, art dealers. And ultimately, after working 13 years as a CPA, which was about 26,000 hours of working primarily with small businesses on taxes, accounting, advisory service, banks, loans. I mean, so I had that grounded period of 13 years of my life. Then that's what I did. Then I left public accounting and joined distribution, the beauty industry, where I became a CFO. I worked in distribution and then for a while, and then left because I was spending a lot of time in distribution educating our salon customers on the money aspect, and really fell in love with education, fell in love with being part of an industry that really appreciated, good intention. I think that many that we were teaching finance to really had felt that they had been talked down to, shamed or whatever. And I loved the idea of communicating numbers in a way that was simple and visual. And then what happened is in distribution, I left and became a consultant. Ultimately, that led to me becoming the co-owner and a president of the Jewel Salons in Minnesota.
I'd heard very much about them.
Which was about a $20+ million business at the time, 8 locations. And that's where I really developed a true heart for the hairstylist and helping them understand money and numbers. And after I sold my ownership and I moved on, and then I became an artist. which to me was necessary part of my life because I always felt that people always pigeonholed me as an accountant. And I wanted to demonstrate that I do indeed have a right brain, and it does have a pulse. And that led me to learning graphic design and all these other things. And so ultimately, to try to get to the end of the story here, I know it's getting too long of a story. I founded this company called Qnity, Qnity, in I think it was 2009. And essentially the mission is to a couple basic beliefs. Number one is that you can make great money, do what you love, and have a quality of life. They're not mutually exclusive. The key word is and. Great money and do what you love and have a great quality of life. It was a big principle, and I learned that money isn't the most important thing in life, but it is like oxygen on the gotta have it scale. And, so just, it's been a career. The majority of my career has been spent in the professional beauty industry. We have done work with like Merrill Lynch and Bank of America and some Fortune 500 companies, but our heart, the heart and soul of what we do is in the professional beauty industry, working primarily with small businesses, many cases micro businesses, to help them become more prosperous in their business.
Yeah, well, first of all, I take my hat off to you, and I think that there's always this thing that plagues our industry, hairdressing, that you can't make big numbers, and there's things that I think that plagues the CPA and numbers industry, that you're not creative. And I can't remember the name of the book. I think it was called 7 Ways of Knowing, and is to understand that the one part of creativity is in numbers. It's the ability to how you can use numbers to get to the things you want. So for those people listening, just because you hear somebody's numbers, that there's amazing people out there that are do numbers and they are super creative. And I'm so impressed that you said, I'm going to still show people that there is something about this creative thing that I have in my side that really does turn up that pulse. Okay, so I think everybody's got can you give us just a little bit? I know you gave us kind of a guideline. I loved what you said on there, that it was number one is that you can make great money, and I wrote a nice big heart down there that you can enjoy what you're doing, and you can still have quality in what you do as well. I want to talk about Qnity Institute just for a second. So give us a bit of what is Qnity Institute, and again, how did that relate to what turned me on to actually wanting you on this podcast was about the data. And I think that's something that we as hairdressers, we're emotional folk. We love what we do. We love being creative, but it's when you really get down to it, if we really want to have quality in our lives, we have to have data. We have to, that's where we make our decisions. Yeah. So give us a little bit more about the Qnity Institute.
Yeah, the Qnity Institute started very organically, and there was not an intention. This isn't like we did a business plan or any of that. It happened very organically, very grassroots. And essentially, it really was born out of a huge frustration that all of us have, myself included, and that is really the lack of data. And lack of data, not lack of data from sort of this, high level whatever, but just on a very pragmatic basis, like lack of data about earnings in the beauty industry. And it's just bugged me for 20 years. And the stereotype about earnings in the professional beauty industry. So the Qnity Institute was founded very organically through some initial sort of beta studies. We didn't even call them a beta study. It just happened. It was like 14 locations. It was designed to say, okay, how much do your employees actually make based upon the W-2s? And do they understand it? I mean, do they really understand it? And the universal response was no. Most don't understand how much they're making. And the majority vastly underestimate the amount they make. Making decisions that were really based upon stories and not facts. So the Qnity Institute, it's funny, Chris, where you start out in your career and the businesses you create is you never know where you end up. And I think that the Qnity Institute was born out of just massive frustration. So essentially, the Qnity Institute is really founded on the principle that of economic empowerment. And economic empowerment coming through actionable data and financial literacy. That's it, economic empowerment. Actionable data means data that's useful to people. And so that was, and the birth of the Qnity Institute was last year.
It's amazing.
2022.
And first thing I was going, where the hell were you when I started out? Where was this information when I started off like 50 some years ago? And I just want to just give a little add on to that where yesterday I was on a webinar with a bunch of other, well, not a bunch of other, means that I was a great in the industry, but there was some industry greats that were on there. And we're all talking about especially towards students and teachers that were teaching in cosmetology schools, et cetera. And the one thing that came out of there was just that I noticed that there is so many kids that are out there and they don't have that financial empowerment, and they get out there and they're flailing and they don't understand the potential that they actually have. Especially, and this would kind of lead me into kind of this thing that, I even wrote down in my notes, the thing that's going now puts a bee in my bonnet, but I'm going to say it like it is, and it just really pisses me off, is that number one, how our industry is perceived financially as low income, that we work long hours and little time off. And I'm actually taking those from those words I actually took from your report. I didn't have the wherewithal to make that up on my own. But I want to talk to you just about the government skewed, I don't know what to call it, algorithm, whatever they did to figure out what an average hairdresser makes. And they put those numbers out there. And I know I'm a part of beauty schools as well. And I know when a parent brings their kid in and the child has browbeat them, I want to go to hairdressing school. That's what I've always wanted to do. And they take them into beauty school and they go up and they research a number and they'll say that they only made $27,000 or whatever it is that the government says. And we know that's not true. So can you talk to us just a little about what your findings were, what's your opinion, and blah, 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 everything after that. That's what I'm really interested in here.
Yeah, piss off is a word that, let's build on it. Pisses me off too. Pisses me off that when someone really wants to understand earnings in the professional beauty industry, they're going to Google it, of course, and they're going to go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it's going to show like $17.30 an hour as an average. And then and I'm looking at some of my notes here in terms of the actual facts and figures here. And then the Department of Education, as analyzed by an organization called the Century Foundation, says $16,600 after 2 to 3 years in the industry. And being in the industry, as long as I have and having access to as much data as I've had in the last 20 years, it's like, it's just not right. And so what I learned, Chris, is that, listen, we began these studies very organically, had no intention to be involved in any political related or government discussions. It happened organically. But what I did learn is that the methods of gathering the data, even by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is remarkably faulty. And in fact, we even had Myra Reedy, who is part of the Professional Beauty Association. She's in charge of government relations. She actually is on record and she's been to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. She's been there. She sits and meets with them in Washington, D.C. And she said, this is Myra Reedy, this is the most accurate, this is the most detailed and accurate data I've seen. Keeping it simple to the W-2 is what everybody should have been doing. This is more information collected than what I've seen from the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
And that's referring to the report that you did. Yeah. And before, yes. I don't want to lose that track, but you and I had a conversation just the other day, and you brought this up to me, and my blood started to boil. And I want you to just tell everybody about what actually Century is really about.
Okay. Well, there's various different organizations that are public research firms, and the Century Foundation, which is a very reputable organization, does studies, and they're extremely well funded, very well funded, and that particular organization has a thing for cosmetology and has issued several reports on cosmetology earnings and have a lot of the reason for the Century Foundation attacking cosmetology has to
Yes.
do with schools. And some of it's warranted. It's holding accountability for schools that receive government funding. I get it. But the statements that they make around earnings are just blatantly inaccurate and flawed. And so, and the Century Foundation has $50 million sitting there in cash right now, ready for more studies. And so here we are, Qnity, a boutique data firm, really, really trying to be agile enough to come in and say, wait a minute, there's some other points of reference here. And so the first time we did this, it was really organic. I mean, we just did it as a very small team, and then we did multiple phases. We got to the third phase, which is where we started to get a little funding, because we did all the funding for this. Qnity did. And so we started adding some muscle to the team. I put together a think tank, which had several PhDs, brought in some great analysts, brought in a project manager, and said, hey, if we're going to really do this, we have to do this of the utmost quality. First of all, we had already dealt with all the data security and all that stuff. But so some of these organizations are really painting a picture of the professional beauty industry that we should have emotion around. Yeah, because it's just, in many cases, it just lacks integrity because it doesn't really tell the full story. Yes, it's true that some people in the beauty industry don't make a lot of money. Well, that's true with CPAs. That's true with tax practitioners. Somebody working at an H&R Block, if you were to say the entire, using like CPAs as an analogy or tax accounting, if you were to say, okay, here is an industry and they make X amount of hours, and it was really for small tax shops like an H&R Block, that wouldn't be telling the full story about the accounting industry.
Yeah, and not to your point, because we did say that they were saying that there was bad actors that were out there in the beauty industry and in schools, and there are some. But, you can't paint everybody that's out there. There's amazing schools out there that are doing phenomenal jobs helping our future individuals and our future salon professionals being incredible at what they do and teaching financial literacy, part of what you do as well. So that's what I think put the bee in my bonnet about Century was that you're just making these, and you're reporting to the government just on these things that are actually inaccurate. So what are some of the things that you found in there? What can you tell us about in your findings that's different than what the government's findings actually were? So can you walk us through this numbers and tell us how that worked? How did you come up with the process of what those numbers actually were versus what the government talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'll keep the methodology. It's simple. Essentially, what we did is we reached out to employee-based salons, which is where we started. So businesses that had employees with W-2s. And we made a very simple statement, and that is that, let's collect information that was submitted to the government that we know is verifiable because it was what was used in the W-2. We didn't see any names of any employees, no personal identifiable information, and just had, it was 330 locations and about 3,000 W-2s that we collected over a period of time. And what we did is we collected earnings, just what was on like box 1, 2, and 8 on the W-2. Then we also collected hours worked and length of service. So pay, hours worked, how long you've been working at the company. from that, we were able to come up with things that normalized earnings by coming up with like an average rate per hour. Somebody makes $50,000 a year, and they work 2,000 hours a year.
Right.
It's $25 an hour. So we could make that computation. And what we found, well, a couple different things here. Just in the interest of full disclosure, and this is really well disclosed, we knew we weren't representing the entire industry, but we also knew we had to start somewhere. And so we started on businesses, small community-based salons, your neighborhood salon, 1 to 10 locations across the country.
Yeah, so you're not saying you just went after all the high-end salons and got the highest figures that you could possibly get.
No, and in fact, something that's interesting, we really, this is not skewed by like New York City, LA, other large markets. In fact, the highest earner we had in this study wasn't even from one of the big major cities. But we found alarmingly different information that's published. What we found is that the average W-2 was $54,000 per year, $54,307.
And that's based on, that's based on numbers that they got. So in other words, give us a little more on that. How did that come up? Was that on a 40-hour work week? If they worked a 40-hour work week, or what was that?
Let me get to that one. So when someone gets a W-2, there's no information about how many hours they worked. It's just that's what reported to the government. And part of the flaw is that people are not considering hours worked when they look at W-2. So here's the other thing we found. So we found the average W-2 was $54,307, but here's the kicker. The average hours worked was 27.8.
Wow. So you're saying they're not working a 40-hour work week. That's 27, and it's they work 27 hours, not a 40 hours, so 13 hours less a week, and they still, when you brought that, their W-2 was 54 Gs.
Now, if you look at an average hourly rate, you do the math, 54,000 divided by about 28 hours, it was $38.37, which is very different than $17.30 an hour.
And so other trade, and that's comparable to other trades that are out there that are working that, and depending on, and this is an average. This is an average, not just of high end, the people that have been at it for 20 years. It's also the people on average based on people that have been at it for 2 years, but also give us, what was that like?
Yeah.
Was it just a full across the board?
Yeah, it was full across the board. So we wanted to make sure someone that he had at least a 1 year length of service, that they at least had, 1 year. And so here's the other thing that's worth noting. The Bureau of Labor Statistics bases their reports on a 40-hour week. So if we were to annualize this, what we would find is the average W-2 would have been $79,807 if somebody chose to work 40 hours a week.
Wow.
Now, we also said that compensation isn't just a paycheck. And so we measured other areas of compensation, including benefits. And we found that 96, now let's be clear, benefits is not just health insurance. Benefits is paid time off. Can be dental insurance. It's paid sick time, 401k, employee assistance programs, et cetera. We found that 96% of these businesses offered
in
benefits.
some way, shape, or form. Wow.
Yeah. Also, if you go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and inquire about the field of cosmetology, it says that there's no on-the-job training. 90% of the businesses in the study offered new hire training, and 83% of these businesses contribute to the cost of outside education. 67% offer education reimbursement allowances. So here we got an industry where working 28 hours a week on average, $54,000, the ability for flexible schedule, the ability to have benefits, ongoing education, and then we continue to measure other things such as career path and return on investment from student loans. And so we went deeper into beyond just the earnings piece. But I think there's some other interesting things in the earnings piece. Please. If I could stay there another minute. We also found that, I swear I had all the stuff to memory, which is pretty ridiculous, but it's been sitting on my shelf for I don't know how many months. I pull it, so I don't have all this memorized. Some of it I still do, but let me give you this one. We found that 24% of respondents, 24% of the 3,300 W-2s would have made over $100,000 if they worked 40 hours a week. That's almost a quarter would be six figures if they worked full time.
I'm going to add one to you that I've talked about this a number of times. I'm going to be openly candid about this to anybody that's listening to this. What you need to do is you need to get this podcast out to the schools. You need to get it to people that if you've got somebody interested in our industry, and you need to get this to those kids so that they can show it to their parents. And I want to give you one other thing. We have a really good friend. His name is Daniel Mason Jones. He has a young kid that's working for him, and I might mess up the hours here. And I can't remember if that she works 18 hours a week or 27 hours a week. But in that time frame, not prorated, she does over $100,000 a year. And I'm not talking that's what she brings in. That's what she earns. So you think about those kids when they, if and I'm going to go off maybe on a tangent here, and you tell me if we need to. I'd like to still stay back on the numbers, but the other part that really upsets me in our industry is part of the government is getting from those figures that people that are cheating on their taxes. Now, let me be clear. I don't like paying my tax. I like paying taxes. I don't want to pay any more than I have to. And I've been known to complain about the stuff that I do have to pay for. However, can you give us a little about what does that do to our industry when people underreport or don't report their income? What does that do for the sake of our industry?
Well, I think you, in a very short sentence or two, allows me to describe a very important difference that fuels the area of taxation. And I am no longer a CPA. I'm not a tax practitioner. And the other qualifier I'm going to have, I'm going to get this one out. Let me stay with tax here, okay? With tax, there's a distinction between tax avoidance and tax evasion. Tax avoidance is deemed to be prudent and something that everybody should have the right to do, is to, within the confines of the law, avoid taxes. Tax evasion is the willful neglect and evading taxes. There's a distinction there. So a few different things about the state of taxation today. There are changes going on. One is that Venmo, or tax law has changed so that if someone is paying someone with Venmo, you have to start giving them a 1099. There's also 87,000 new tax IRS employees. And so tax compliance is going to become much more a hot button. And this is something that causes me a lot of angst, and that's tax evasion in the industry, the willful Pete. I have somebody that we all know that he lost a couple people, and they literally just looked at him in the eye and says, well, why should I work here when I have to pay taxes, when if I go on my own, I don't have to pay taxes? And So now we might as well segue into this subject of tax as it relates to our study, because the $38 an hour that we came up with as an average is we made no adjustment for any potential underreporting of income. We just assumed that, hey, it was on the W-2, but we know that's not the case. Let's just say tax underreporting was off by, here we go. If we assumed, that a certain percent that the tax underreporting was 8 to 10%, the numbers would go up to, they'd go up to over almost $41.50 an hour. So our $38 an hour number is very conservative, and it's most likely much higher than that.
This episode is sponsored by the Salon Associate Accelerator from trainersplaybook.com. Are you struggling with the time and cost of associate training? Do you feel like your salon is running you? We'll get your associates on the floor, all with 90% less time from you, so you can get back to building your business. Get them world-class design, finishing, color, and client care skills they'll use every day for the rest of their career, while you focus on realizing your vision. Go to trainersplaybook.com and get the Salon Associate Accelerator. And now, back to the show. Yeah, that's really interesting. And so, I also think that if you think about how the way that we get house loans and home loans and our credit rating, et cetera, goes by what we report as well. And when the government comes up with $27,000 a year because people are underreporting, that means I'll never forget this. When I believe it or not, I at one time did some courses on business, and I didn't know a whole lot about business and what that meant for it. And I went to going to my banker who helped me to get the money for my salons. And I went to him and I just said, I've heard that about hairdressers. Why is it that hairdressers have such a hard time getting a loan? And he said, well, number one, he said, is because they're a big risk, because the money that they report is lower than what we would normally loan on, number one. And he said that for what they report, we see it as a high, what was the words he used? A higher labor to money ratio. In other words, you've got to work 3 times as hard to get the money because they weren't reporting. And that affects not only them individually, but affects our industry. So now when hairdressers you could try to go to get any money from anything, you have a harder time just because of the label that goes along with it as a low income profession. So like you said, and I saying to everybody, please do not, we're not saying go out and report and overpay on your taxes, but stay within your limit and make sure you pay accordingly, making sure you get as many deductions as you possibly can, and you'll have a better life, and hairdressers will have a better life. You can sleep at night, and all hairdressers out there will have true facts on what our industry is really about. So I just can't. Sure. That's you're reporting on there. Just once I read that, I just went, this is really, really good stuff. So what else can you tell us about on this based on your studies? What are other things that really jumped out on you for you on this study?
I think the scheduling flexibility was a big one, and the narrative out there being low income, very little time off, overworked, and it really paints a picture of a very confining environment, which is not the case. And 94% of companies, let's see here. It was, here we go. 99% of companies offered some or total schedule flexibility. Other industries, 54%. And 19% of employers offered complete total schedule flexibility. And so it's a tremendous industry that are for those that quality life is important. Maybe it is raising a family, starting a family, or being sort of at the end of your career where you want to slow down. It's really the amount of schedule flexibility is something that needs to be highlighted.
You brought up a really good point there, Tom, is that because, I'm sure that anybody listening goes, wow, it's a very young voice, but no, it's not. Anybody that's watching can see that I've got this grizzly gray beard and gray hair, et cetera, and I've been around a number, and that's not too hard to figure out that I'm a baby boomer, and baby boomers just wanted to work. If you said you could work 40, we'd say I want to work 60. So, but the reality is that's not what the average people want nowadays, is it? That nowadays people want that, but if you're a smart business owner, then you've still got chairs. If somebody's not working, you've got an open station, and you can still work longer hours, have people working shorter hours for their balance that they want, and just have other people that are coming in to work in your salon, right? So I think that there's a way that even salon owners can make more money out of this. And I've got to write down a note because I know the question, the objection they got coming in their brain right now. So how do you see that? What's your Can you elaborate on what we were talking about there?
You mean in terms of still work flexibility?
Yeah.
And
how does that
hours?
work to the advantage of the owner? Like the owner of business who might be like me, baby boomer, said, no, you got to work 40 hours a week. And then they work 40 hours a week and you got a chair sitting there.
Yeah, there's definitely been some generational angst around that, and you see it very often within a business where you might have a more seasoned hairdresser that is a baby boomer. They really have a hard time understanding, current generation and their desire for schedule flexibility. And it's just the reality of the marketplace. Flexibility, in most cases, is a higher priority than actual pay. And having control of your schedule and being able to have a quality life. It's just the marketplace these days.
I'll never forget when, and I'm going to bring up, he was a mentor of mine, Bill Ross. This is out of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I was this young kid working my way up the ranks, and my rates went up and I was booking more, et cetera. And then I said I wanted to go on my own. Long story short, we were going to go into business together, and he said, no, you're better on your own. And he helped me along the way. Loved that man. Loved he and Thelma. And and I remember that one time he came in and he said to me, he phoned me up and he said, Chris, he said, do you want to go? Because he and I always went to, he was the boss, but we were also friends, and which is sometimes highly unusual. But he said, you want to go for coffee? I said, absolutely, Bill, anytime, because we always had great conversations. And we went out for coffee, and he said, Chris, I just want to thank you. And he said, I went, oh, I got all puffy, and I was going, oh, for what? What did I do that was so great? And he said, I want to thank you for quitting. And I went, what? And he said, yeah. He says that because he had put my rate up a lot and he was paying me a lot of commission, et cetera. And he said, yeah, I just hired on 3 more people and I'm making twice as much money as I was when I was paying you. And I went, well, that's kind of the most left-handed compliment I think I've ever received. But my point is, if business people are out there really thinking about right now that you have all of these people that are out there that want work, but they want life balance, they don't want to work as many hours, and just if you could, the way that you book them in, you can still make. And I'm not saying this to sound like I'm an incredible businessman, because I know that there's people out there that are doing that right now. But I'm saying for the people that are out there like myself that get rigid about here's what my business has to be because that's what it was 20 years ago. They're going to get antiquated and die, because that we've got to adjust and with the time and what people want, make it work for them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And those that have not been agile and been slow to react to the marketplace. It's one thing to stand up for quality. It's one thing to stand up for, whatever
Yeah.
standards you have. But on the other hand, staying relevant means staying in touch with the current workforce. Other things that came out of the study is that 94% of these businesses were hiring, and, we have an industry where many are not encouraged to come into the industry, yet there's an opportunity to make very good money, of which to a great degree you control, which could definitely be six figures, have schedule flexibility, have benefits, have training, have career path, have high return on investment. But that's not the story being told. The story being told is that this is a career that has poverty level earnings. And so, and the other thing that came out of the study was entrepreneurship. 76% of the owners were cosmetology graduates. So the number of career paths, and you look at the career that you've had, phenomenal career. I came in through the back door. I've never been a licensed service provider. But I've been very welcomed by the industry, and I appreciate that. It's been a great career for me. And the thing that you can't quantify, but we actually broke compensation down into 8 areas. And our final area was passion. And we have no metrics around that one. We have 7 out of the 8 numbers, 7 out of the 8 career factors we had numbers around. Then we had passion. And, that's something that can't be quantified. And economic empowerment is really about making sure that people have actionable information and financial literacy so that they can make, career decisions for them, their family, and their stakeholders. And the in a world where, touch is becoming less and less removed, I'm actually very optimistic about the beauty industry. I'm optimistic about the beauty industry because it really, in an era where the word artificial is being celebrated, this is it'll be the last human-centered industry by definition.
Yeah. And, no, go ahead.
And the trades are where it's at right now. A lot of careers that require a 4-year degree is, many of those fields are going to disappear. But you want to make great money today, be a plumber. Yeah. Be an electrician. Go into a field that doesn't require a 4-year degree. So return on investment is also something that many don't see in, a very short amount of time to become licensed, a short amount of time to sort of, learn the ropes, and you can start making an income while someone's still in college.
Yeah. And is to that point, there's this reputation. I've heard stories about this. I don't know anybody that has ever done that. But I have heard that some kids will get in their business, they'll go through the course, just like lackadaisical, get into a salon. They don't try to improve themselves, and after a year, they're still making that pittance wage that they were making before. And I've heard this said is that I've heard some people say that they've quit saying, "Why would I want to continue working for this when I can go to McDonald's, start off at this wage?" And now I want to be clear that I'm not. I will eat their food. Yes, some people call it junk, but I still like it. I don't know anything about their business practices, but I will tell you, in my mind, if you're there as a laborer and you're there because instead of making what you thought was $17 an hour at $20 an hour, that's all you're going to be making for the next 5 years. Whereas in our industry, and I've said this many times, I'm going to say it again for those of you who heard me say it, you don't have to tune out. I just want you to write it down if you haven't written it already. is when people ask me what you can make in our industry, and I'll say exactly what you deserve. So if you're going to put in time, and to me, everything in our industry is about what we always call a learning to earning curve. So you're like, imagine that first year where you're just learning out, maybe your wage stays level for a little bit. And the more you earn, all of a sudden that curve starts to happen, and you're learning more, then you're earning a little bit more, you're learning even more, earn even a bit more. And finally something hits with you and it goes through the roof. And I know that's what happened to me. Is at the very beginning, believe me, I started off in the industry. My take-home pay was $189 a month. My rent was $90. But I had to have the determination just to say, I'm going to do whatever it takes so that I can be great at what I do, love what I do. And because I love what you said about passion, about being able to do something that you absolutely love, but make the money that you absolutely deserve. And so my thing that I would tell every young kid that's out there, or even if you're just hanging about, it ties together. You don't learn without education. And if you're in school, you got to get that foundational stuff so you've got it. And the faster that you can get out and learn more, so it couples with what your foundation you got in school, that's what propels you into these greater figures. So you always have to know that the more that you earn and the more that you learn, the more that you're going to earn as this moves along. So, this has been incredible insight in there. And I just take my hat off to you on all this. Is there any other things? I mean, we still got a little bit of time left. And I just want to say if there was anything else that you came out of your study that you just found that was impactful, something that we need to hear.
I relate. Well, there's a founding story, not a founding story, but just something that really kind of woke us up, that caused us to continue our work in the study. And it was a phone call I got. It was May of 2022. I was off in Europe at a wedding, and it was a text, and a guy really wanted to talk to me. And he was a master hairstylist and worked for a family member. And I said, I'll call you right when I get back home. So I call him back, and his student, we'll call him Adam. Okay, that's not his real name. He said, Tom, I'm having money issues, and he said, I'm not making enough money. And I said, okay. And he said, and I don't know how to have this conversation with so and so, which is a family member that he worked for. And then he revealed that his wife was with him in the car. And so we were on speaker, and I said, okay. I said, well, how much do you make? Well, they had never really done the math. All right. So I started doing the math. And after about 3 minutes of getting the numbers from them, they did a little quick check. And I said, okay. So, Adam, I want you to know that you're making approximately $147,000 a year. And later I looked up and say, well, that's in the top 7% of earners in the country.
Wow.
And he didn't know. And nor did his wife. And he was going to make some career decisions, create a family feud by approaching a family member saying, I'm not making enough money, I need more. And it got very quiet when I said, do you realize you're making 147? So I guess a big aha for me, Chris, is, and really the impetus for the study is that I think it's a subset of financial literacy. And I have a lot of empathy for my fellow humans. And math anxiety is something very, very real. I believe the number is it's an enormous percentage of people. I think it's 60% report some form of math anxiety. And I think what I would love to see is that people had a greater appreciation, people that are already in the industry have a greater appreciation, and have people help them do the math, because many people grossly underestimate their earnings and make decisions that affect them and their family. They leave the industry. Here it is. 73% of Americans rate finances as a significant source of stress. 50% of employees say they live paycheck to paycheck. But what we have found is that most in this industry don't have an earnings issue. They either have a spending issue, a savings issue, or they don't understand the potential of what they can do with just a little bit of effort, how much more money they can make.
And I think that's where there is tons of people listen, you can find out 10 ways to Sunday how to do a haircut, how to do a color differently, how to do all of this. But I think that it's just the financial literacy of how you can make sure that you do this. I just remember reading a book, and I don't remember the name of the book. I think it was probably, I was back in the 80s, and I remember reading this book that they said if you literally at that time put $5 away and with compound interest, and you did your business that you wanted to do for your work in your 20 or 30 years, if you would have done that, you would have over $1 million at the end of the year by the time that you had compound interest. And, I read the book. I probably had already been in the business for about 10 or 15 years. I thought, this is amazing. I told people about it, but I never did it. And then all of a sudden I got into a certain stage of my life and I looked at it and I went, holy crap, I don't have anything that I have that's about savings worthwhile. Now, so then I had to double and triple down on everything that I had to do. And I think about how much more of that I would have had for security wise if I would have done that at early rates. So if there's anything that I tell kids to do now is don't, like right now, everybody's saying, well, I want to go on a holiday. I'm just going to spend all my money. I'm going to go to Europe. I said, great, do that. But still take 5 or 10% of everything that you make and make sure you put that aside and do not touch it or invest it or do whatever. So you've got that backup. So what do you, I know how you feel about that, but I just wish that I would have done that.
Yeah, I think that what we've created, a lot of the work that I've done prior to the last 3 years, Chris, was more on small business finances. And what we've created right now is we've created something called Money EDU, which teaches financial literacy to students. And that was the project before the Qnity Institute. We went from 0 to 157 campuses in a year and a half. So we're now teaching almost 20,000 students a year and here's how I like to say it, is to have the financial education to match their art and heart. So get out in the workforce, do your art, express your heart, but, learn the financial skills so that you can really have that kind of freedom that comes, so you can have the quality of life you're looking for. It's not hard, and financial literacy is just not taught in schools. And so to me, I think symptomatic to a lot of this, like Adam's story, with a little bit of financial education and that kind of stuff, he wouldn't have had all these years of stress like, I'm not making enough money. He would have made some very simple changes that would have put him at a different point than he was in his life.
I just want to bring this up because I'm hesitating just from the conversation that you and I had just before we went on the air here. And I'm going to ask the question anyway, and you can tell me whether you want to respond to it or not. Because as soon as you came on, we had some difficulties at the beginning technically, but just before that, you said to me, ask me why I am late. And I thought, oh my God, that's just unbelievable news. Can you tell us anything about that?
Well, we were invited to apply to a Fast Company World Changing Ideas Award, and literally right when I was supposed to dial in for this, someone on the team called and said, "Hey, we're doing this application. They asked me some dates question." And so anyway, these are world changing ideas that are things that help make the world more equitable, more sustainable. So So the Qnity Institute is a pretty disruptive idea. It was established within the last year, and so we'll see. I mean, maybe we get acknowledged by Fast Company, maybe we don't. It's not necessarily important this whether we get acknowledged or not. But
don't sell that
I
short,
do
because
think,
I mean that's. I take my hat off to you. That thing. I think that the more that we have people that are in our industry that get acknowledged for what they do, that boosts all of us. That's why I'm so excited about this for you. Is I just think that the more that our industry gets out there, not painted with the brush that we've been painted with before, because we have amazing people in our business who care. There's their heart, their soul. They pour everything into what they do for their customers and their industry, and for the salon owners and the school owners that are out there that try to make everything better for us. We just need we need people like you in it. So I take my hat off to you, and I hope and pray that that award goes to you.
oh, well, it takes a village. It's been a very collaborative project. And for the record, I mean, the first time around when we did these studies, we funded all of them, but this has turned out to be a major collaborative, and some beauty
That's
brands
good.
have really stepped up to really start to help sponsor this work. And you can read who the sponsors were and all of that. I don't want to get into that, but it does take a village. And Chris, it's a true honor to be with you today. I'm looking over your shoulders, man. You've got a lot of hardware there. You've gotten a lot of awards, and shout out to you, my friend. I mean, this podcast is super cool. You don't have to do this. There's other things you could be doing, but I think that what really makes me tick, especially as I'm a baby boomer too, which people that are viewing this can easily see that. But impact is impact's number one for me. And income comes later, and I could tell you're an impact guy, and what an honor to be part of this session.
It's pleasure was
friend.
mine. And by the way, if you ever want any of that stuff, eBay is amazing. But the point that I want to do is, like, if people want to know more, because let's face it, you've got Qnity for salons, you've got Qnity for schools, you've got the Qnity Institute. If people want to know more about you, if they want to know, like, how do I get a hold of you? How do I find out more about this? How do they do that?
Yeah, it's Qnity, Qnity. So we're, of course, on social. I'll give you my email. It's tom.kuhn@qnityinc.com, QNITYINC.com. And I'm always happy to engage in conversation with people. Here's the other thing. Every Wednesday, I got to have you. By the way, this is an invitation live, okay? Every Wednesday at 10 o'clock Central Time, I do something called Lightbulb Moments. And this is my version of it's a live podcast that I do by Zoom, but it's live and we have an audience. I want to have you as a guest, but that's a good way to kind of stay engaged with us, is just hear what's going on in the community. We talk about data that comes out. I have great guests. I'd love to have you as a guest. And
Accepted.
Lightbulb Moments Wednesdays.
Absolutely accepted. Listen, I can't thank you enough on here, because again, everybody, if you're just listening, we are winding up, but please do not leave right now, because this is something that I want, and I'm imploring everybody that's listening and watching that you need to forward this kind of podcast on to people that are interested in our industry, to salon owners. If you know a salon owner that's out there right now that is always getting hassled by it, every hairdresser that's out there that's getting put into a box because of what they think our industry is, not what it actually is. I think we really need to get that message out there. But Tom, just based on everybody from our company, from myself, I feel I've got a new friend in arms here, and I just want to thank you so much for being on here. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yes, the pleasure's been mine too. We have a new friendship, my
there
friend.
You
Let's
go.
give a little fist pump across the. Yeah, thank you, and thanks to your listeners, man. Great work, and I feel like I'd like to keep this conversation going. I just feel like I need a cocktail at this point. Not that I need a cocktail. I don't need one.
Yeah, well,
but I would enjoy
mine is
one
a little bit
with
both.
you.
But I don't necessarily need it, but I do need it and want it. But listen, Tom, I just want to say one more time for you, Tom Qnity, Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Appreciate it.